Hello, welcome to our webinar, All Things Chargebacks with Fraud Deflect and Ethoca Mastercard. My name's Don Bush. I'm going to moderate some of the questions in our discussion as we talk with Scott Adams, CEO of Fraud Deflect, and Kyle Smith from Ethoca Mastercard. If you guys want to take just a minute, introduce yourselves, let people know who you are so they know that you're authority in answering some of our questions.
Sure. Thanks, Don. So I'm Scott Adams, CEO, co-founder of Fraud Deflect. I've been doing fraud, payments, risk, all this kind of stuff for like nearly 25 years now. Was a merchant most of my career, anything from mom and pops to Riot Games, Epic Games, video game companies, and everything in between. And now I'm running Fraud Deflect, and trying to help merchants to stay out of VAMP and all the other monitoring programs out there.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. I'm Kyle Smith, and I lead partnerships globally for Ethoca. And what that means is that we work with issuer side partners, merchant side partners, all who service merchants and issuers in and around fraud mitigation, chargeback mitigation, everything around post-consumer transactional experience and how to reduce friction from the ultimate seller of merchandise and the ultimate buyer of merchandise. And we have a number of partners in our ecosystem across the globe, and happy to be here talking about ways to get rid of chargebacks.
Well, I think everybody's always interested in how to get rid of chargebacks, so appreciate both of you being here. And Kyle, I want to start with you just for a minute. We've seen a rise in chargeback or fraudulent chargebacks in the industry. How's MasterCard addressing the challenge, issuers and merchants in that ecosphere?
Yeah, so it's a multi-pronged approach. It's not one thing. It's a number of different things, and it starts off with Mastercard's first-party trust program, which enable merchants to share compelling evidence about transactions. That could be transaction IDs and IP addresses and delivery addresses, and that to distinguish legitimate transactions from fraudulent transactions. Then we move into Ethoca product called Consumer Clarity, which enables merchants then to share from a SKU level detail about transactions. We get logos, we get digital receipts, just everything that is going to enable a card holder to remember what they purchased. If you look at the transactions over the last 5 or 6 years in e-commerce and how they've just skyrocketed, COVID obviously played a big role in that. But at the end of the day, you go and ask people what they purchase, and they don't always remember, or they'll have multiple different people using different cards in their family, and there's purchases that they're just unaware of. And so, friendly fraud, as it's been coined, or for first-party fraud, ultimately the idea is the more we can share data, the better the consumer will be able to make decisions about that dispute. And so we see. Generally, the first thing that happens is rather than the cardholder picking up the phone and calling the merchant and saying, "Hey, I don't recognize this transaction. Can you help me?" They just call their bank and dispute it. And it's behavior that is prevalent in the U.S., a little less prevalent in Europe. But we've worked with merchants and merchant partners to try to find a way to mitigate those transactions from being disputed, or to mitigate those disputes that come from those types of transactions. And then we move into alerts. If we can't actually stop it, and a transaction still is being sent through the network and ultimately charged back, what we do is we intercept that. We have partnerships with about 11,000 issuers globally, where we're sent that data prior to that data being sent to the schemes: Mastercard, Visa, American Express, and Discover. We take that data, we share it with our merchant partners and our direct merchants, and enable them to action it. And what that means is that it's a signal that's early enough they might be able to stop the shipment of goods out of their warehouse, or if they're a particularly chargeback concerned merchant, we're able to have them refund that transaction to prevent that chargeback from ever being filed. So it's a multi-pronged approach, and our most recent addition to the Clarity Suite is a product called Smart Subscriptions. We acquired a company called Minute Technologies, and ultimately this is just really going to be a game changer. It's going to enable, more collaboration between the issuer and the merchant, and the cardholder and the merchant, and a way for cardholders in the digital banking app to pause, cancel, upgrade, downgrade subscriptions, and for the merchant then to come back with different offers, retention offers, and things of that nature. And it's just a continued effort to use collaboration rather than just claim adjudication or chargeback adjudication as a solution that drives value for everybody in the ecosystem.
That's great. I mean, that's a lot to keep track of, for one. You mentioned a phrase that I've always thought is funny, friendly fraud.
Yeah.
I come from the fraud industry. Fraud's never friendly. It's always something that's kind of a bear to deal with. But, Scott, as we start talking about consumer clarity, the smart subscription, FPT, all these different things, how does your platform manage all that data and make sense out of it? Because as Kyle said, it's multi-pronged. There's lots of things to either stop or mitigate as we go through. How does Fraud Deflect do that?
Really, it comes into this understanding the data and the ecosystem, right? Like anything else, what's the use? What's the use case? And in this case, there's a lot of different ways to approach it, different products we're using across the ecosystem. And, because of that, it's difficult, right? It takes a lot of expertise, a lot of experience, but, between myself and the team, we've been doing this for probably 100-something years combined. Plus we've got people like Kyle and the Ethoca team to help us with that. And so, so we have it in our database in a way that we can pull it up in sub-second time. And we make sure we have all the fields covered. And we think about it, how we approach it. It's first, obviously, on a technical level, but the more important part, I think, in a lot of ways, is approaching it in, like I said, with the use case and thinking about the stories, right? So we always say we want to tell like kind of 3 or 4 stories with our data. One, especially with a product like Clarity, we want to, talk to the user. So, like a consumer calls in, they're wanting information. They want to know what this is, right? They might think it's fraud, but what if it's, like Kyle said, friendly fraud, right? In that case, we want to say, look, consumer, you did purchase this. Here's the information. Here's where you purchased it. Maybe the descriptor says something, some LLC that they registered 20 years ago, and they never changed it. But yet now they're selling under maybe a brand name website. And so we make sure that kind of the first story is reminding the consumer what they purchased, who they purchased it from, maybe actually who purchased it. Like, friendly fraud, often it's, a shared card, it's your wife, it's your kid, something like that.
I find the friendly nomenclature, right? Fraud's never friendly, but I think that there's a spectrum. If you look at why disputes happen, I think it's a spectrum from benign to malicious. And I think or I like to think in a lot of cases, it's a benign, it's a mistake, and they don't remember what they purchased. I just had a transaction come through for $89. It's a mystery. We're going to have to go look at it when I get back home from the conference for Google. And,
you don't know.
I don't remember making it, but I'm sure we did. And that's generally the attitude that I take with it. But obviously there's bad actors in the ecosystem.
You're from the space, though,
yeah,
so
right.
You know how that works, but the average consumer doesn't.
That's true.
So we always tell we try to, in our data, tell the consumer, literally put on there, this was, your wife's name, your kid's name, what they purchased.
Sure.
That way, when they click into the app or it pops up on the customer support screen, they know. Because it's, like you said, it's friendly, but I think, you go back to when that term was coined, it wasn't really fraud, right? It's friendly because it's a friend.
Yeah.
Right. It's you, it's your wife, it's your kid.
Oh, we talk about this all the time. How do you detect friendly fraud? As a partner who does fraud scoring or fraud detection as a whole, how do you detect friendly fraud? You can't.
I'm still trying to figure that out, but honestly, I don't think you can.
Yeah, no.
I think it comes down to these kind of collaborative products.
100%.
But Kyle mentioned it earlier. We as consumers are kind of trained, call your bank.
Yeah.
I might not even know if I go to a website, I might not even see a phone number.
Yeah.
I got my bank's number.
That's right.
And my bank takes care of it.
Well,
right? There's commercials that say, zero liability.
Right. It's funny because I manage, or my team manages both issuer and merchant side partners. I get to see both of them, and I really like to you came to our summit. I like to put together these partner summits where we have issuer side partners and merchant side partners come together, and when they're separate, they really just, oh, the merchants, their bad behavior is the reason we're in this mess to begin with. And if you talk to the merchants, the issuers, they just allow every transaction to go through because they just want us to pay for it. But when you get them together and you really start to have conversations, you realize that, it's not all of one thing or all of another, right? I do think that issuers in the U.S. especially, because of Reg A and Reg Z, and just because of generally the way in America we want to have white glove customer service, and you don't want your customer to be mad or to complain. And especially when we deal with some of the processors, they have thousands of issuers that they're providing an outsourced dispute management process for, and you're serving their customer, right? And they're your customer. And so I think there's a notion they want to make sure they're pleasing their customer and doing all these things, and they don't want to put up too much of a fight. But that's evolving because, transactions that get disputed cause friction in the ecosystem. And so we're trying to arm those call center agents with, intelligent tools to have those intelligent conversations with the cardholders, because, hey, here's a subscription that came through, and, look, you've paid for it 6 times previous to this month. Why are you disputing now versus these other 5 months? And so, look, it's an evolution. It's going to continue to take collaboration. The more partners we have on the merchant side that can be a global repository of that intelligent data, and the more issuers we have that are, hitting the API and saying, hey, let's learn a little bit more about this and have a conversation with our cardholders, we'll get there. It just is, it's a process.
So I like the fact that coming from merchants, we know how merchants act, how they think, what they need, the services they require, whether they know it or not, because you've been in their shoes. And you mentioned issuers. Talk a little bit more about the issuer's responsibility here in this whole process when we start talking about whether it's malicious or friendly. Where do they fall in here?
Maybe a good question for you, Kyle.
Well,
I
look,
understand that world. I really don't.
We can only speak for ourselves, and I can speak from experience, but I think that the issuer's responsibility with the regulation is, if a cardholder says it was a dispute or it's not their transaction, it's not their transaction. And there's only so much resistance you're going to put up to, like, hey, it says that it says it right here. We have it's your IP address. It's this, it's that. You have a pattern of purchasing from this vendor in the past. I'm telling you, this time it wasn't me. I do that, and I do buy those things, and I love this provider, but this was not me. And in those situations, the issuer really doesn't have a choice other than to just move forward with it. In Europe, we see some different behaviors. They'll just go, no, we're not going to move forward with the dispute. It's a little bit of a different regulation. And again, just caveating all this is just anecdotal, but at the end of the day, what we see is everybody wants to make their customer happy, and there's regulations in the U.S. that exist that say if the cardholder is willing to sign an affidavit that says they didn't do it, or they're willing to say they didn't do it, they didn't do it. And so
so Scott, how does that resonate with merchants? Because merchants are kind of caught in the middle here. Consumer, issuer, merchant.
Yeah. That's what I think's difficult in this industry, right? Because with the exception of, say someone like me that's been a merchant, played a merchant, now kind of represents merchants never really get to talk to the issuers, right? Unless it's like, I talk to the issuers by going to summits that you put on, right? Or in places like Money 2020, where we are now.
Yeah.
But they never get to talk. And that's where I think it's great that companies like Ethoca exist, and Technologies, and a lot of things Mastercard's doing, because it tries to bridge that gap. And then that's even like we're talking about the data, something I say a lot of times is that I like to believe everybody at heart is good, right? But I think a lot of chargebacks come from either, if it's not confusion, was one use case, right? Another case would be if, maybe someone just can't pay their bill this month, or overspent at Christmas.
Oh, we saw a ton of this. How many Pelotons got charged?
Yeah, Pelotons during
COVID.
During COVID.
Yeah.
And so they can't pay their bill. And that's again where like the collaboration between issuers and merchants, but with the intermediaries of these kind of products and that we help in. And so that's one of the stories we also tell, is that we like to think that if we can give the issuer enough information where they can now talk to the consumer, because if the consumer calls in and says, hey, I didn't do it, and the issuer doesn't have any more information, what are they going to do?
Yep.
Hit chargeback.
Yep.
And the consumer, it's a 2-second conversation. They have no reason, they have no time to feel guilty. They have no time to rethink, hey, maybe I should pay for this. So we like to make sure to give enough information so the issuer can start to have a little bit of dialogue. Once there's a dialogue, you've got now a little bit of psychological connection.
Yeah.
And then the consumer's saying, okay, yeah, I'm a good person, I shouldn't do this.
Yeah, I mean, the chargeback process as a whole, it is you're going to assign liability, and it's either going to be the issuer's liability or the merchant's liability. So
someone's taking liability.
The claim adjudication process of a chargeback is set up where one wins and one loses, where we really tried to design, or the Ethoca network as a whole is built on the collaboration of issuers and merchants together. And even in that situation, they're not always talking to each other. They're talking to each other through signals, through alert signals or clarity APIs and things of that nature.
But we can't see, as a merchant, we can't see, right, how that's actually displayed at each, there's an API, we know the specs, right? But we don't see the screen of each individual issuer,
right, who's
probably coded it different every single time. So
yeah, I mean, I can tell you from our perspective, the things that we're working on to expand the reach, right? Originally we were just alerts, and
which were helpful.
And we were sitting down with one of the largest digital merchants on the planet. We got everybody in a room, and we started talking about, like, how to use alerts and what can we do better, and what do you like and what don't you like, and one of the things that we heard was, from one particular digital merchant said about 70% of the alerts we get are for transactions we absolutely know definitively are legitimate transactions. And if there was only a way for us to give almost like representment detail to the issuer at the point of inquiry or concern. And this is how consumer clarity was born for us as an organization, as a product. It was like, well, what if we could serve that up? And so we said to that global digital merchant, awesome, just give us all your data. And they're like, you are out of your mind. There's no way we're going to give you our data. So we built an API that basically goes in, matches the transaction, pulls back the SKU level detail, and presents it to the cardholder, either in the digital banking app or to the call center agent in the call center in the screen. Here's the evidence that it was them that actually purchased that stuff. And so that's how we build products at Ethoca, is we just voice the customer. It's so important to us. We listen to our partners and our direct merchant customers, and then just try to figure out a way to remove the friction that continues to exist. I don't think, if we're successful, we eradicate all chargebacks and nobody has any problem in transactions, but I don't think we're going to get there.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think you mentioned it, Scott. It's got to have this discussion. And right now we're having it with bits and bytes, and eventually there's a customer, a merchant, a bank, all run by people, and they're having this discussion electronically. How do we make that more consumerish, so that the consumer doesn't feel like they're getting screwed?
Yeah. And
the merchant doesn't feel like they're getting screwed. And the bank feels like they're being compliant, and policy and guidelines and all that is being done. I remember at one of our conferences we did several years ago, there's 3 things that cause chargebacks. One is, fraud. There's real fraud out there.
Yeah.
Little
fraud.
It's the littlest piece of all 3 of them, though. I mean, it
really
may be
now
5 or 10%. The next biggest piece was merchant error. What did the merchant did? They didn't have a good refund policy. They didn't take the exchange. They didn't, code it right on the bill, the descriptor.
Purposely, they might make it difficult to return something.
Exactly. Yeah. And then the last part is that big questionable. Is it friendly fraud? Is it really a mistake? Is it somebody that got laid off and they can't pay their bill this month? Can I, do something like that? So ultimately, we've got to figure out what those things are as we go through this process. But you mentioned alerts, and it seems like there's a lot fewer duplicate alerts now. Has something changed?
Yeah, we've had a team over the last year working on uh, a number of different initiatives to drive down the number of duplicates, and we've seen tremendous success over the last. I think we put in the first change in late July, early August, and we've seen a dramatic decrease in duplicate alerts. So it's a collaborative effort from our product teams and tech teams to try to figure out a better way to ensure that we're not seeing those duplicate alerts. So ongoing effort, continue to strive to be better each day.
There's a lot less too. Like,
Yep.
I think, like I say, I'm not a merchant anymore, but supporting merchants, I could say they appreciate it, and we appreciate it because we had technology in there to stop duplicates.
Yeah.
And then we had to communicate with you guys, and it's this back and forth thing that takes time, makes merchants mad because they think, wait, there's duplicates. They don't want to pay for those. Even if we tell them over and over, you're not going to. Just give us a little bit of time.
Yep.
So yeah, really appreciate it. And like you said, that you guys listen. And some, I'm sure some of your partners are a little noisier than others. So I'm glad you listen to those people who are noisy.
Indeed. Indeed. Hey, Don, you mentioned, what things can be done in the industry. And I mean, this is just, I look at all the different conferences we have with the Merchant Risk Council, and we have, we have different conferences throughout the year, Money 2020, et cetera. I would love to see a conference with issuers and merchants together, like, and content around disputes, or content around fraud, content around cardholder behavior and merchant behavior, and what roles the issuers and the merchants can play in
Better collaboration.
and better in collaboration. I mean, we do partner summits where we invite issuers and merchants together and to have the conversation. And I find once everybody's together, they're just people and they have conversations, and we purposely put them right next to each other and make them talk to each other and become friends. But yeah, I'd like to see something, that's agnostic, that's in the industry, where it brings everyone together. But
I would love to see that. Like,
yeah,
just the one you did, back in Miami.
Yep.
It was so good, and I always find it interesting. And you can just even us talking to merchants, we see the same thing. But it was interesting when, like, you asked me to get up, or Chris did, to talk about chargebacks from the merchant perspective. And you could see the issuers and even some of the acquirers, their eyes light up and ask, wait, what? That's how merchants see chargebacks? It's just, because I think, and I even see that, like, going from being a merchant to working within a bigger company in, like, the fraud space. It's the same thing. It's like, I think that as humans, right, we tend to narrow in on something, and, like, we get really good at this thing, right? We're doing this job, this part of our job.
Yeah.
And that's how companies are too, right? They narrow in on something, you solve a problem. But, I think, like, the issuers and merchants are they deal with each other every single day, yet they're so far apart. And so I think it's seldom that the issuer really understands the merchant, and vice versa. Like, I was telling someone earlier today, that's the area of this ecosystem that I don't understand very well. And I would love to, right? I played in all the other spaces, but I don't know how issuing works.
Yeah, it's I came out of the issuing world, and that was where my particular expertise lied. Was I have a history in payments and B2B payments, and there's not a lot of chargebacks in B2B payments because they're single-use virtual cards. It's more employee misuse if somebody uses one. But when I came to Ethoca 8 years ago, boy, it was eye-opening to see just hearing the stories. Everybody has a fraud story, and just hearing all the different ways that fraud happens in all the different industries that see a lot of it.
Yeah. Everybody's got a fraud story. Everybody's got a chargeback story.
Yeah.
You won't believe this one.
Yeah.
You sit at a round table, talk long enough, you're going to get some good ones. You mentioned first-party trust connection, and we kind of glazed over it. I want to go a little bit deeper into that and what that is and how that process works.
Yeah, ultimately, it's the ability for a merchant to shift the liability by providing bits of evidence about a transaction. So you can go in and grab a couple different points of evidence on a particular cardholder, and if you can find similar transactions over the last 120 days, you're able to ultimately shift the liability back to the issuer. And it's a designed by Mastercard for Mastercard transactions, and Visa has compelling evidence 3.0, and ultimately it's more ways for merchants to present. It's just like the example I gave you of the digital goods merchant, where they felt like more of those alerts were legitimate transactions. It's just a way to prove that a transaction that's being charged back was actually a legitimate transaction by showing the cardholder's behavior over a period of time, by providing bits of compelling evidence, and the networks ultimately will shift the liability. Mastercard will shift the liability back to the issuer, and the transaction will be rejected. Cardholder or the chargeback will be rejected. Yeah.
Scott, when it comes to fraud deflect, you're kind of first line of defense with merchants when they have a problem. They're looking for expertise, they're looking for help in myriad different ways. What does it mean to have a partnership with somebody like Ethoca, Mastercard in that pursuit?
You know what, I talk about this a lot, really, especially with Kyle and others in the space, and it's having an actual partner is invaluable, right? Not only like I kind of joking about being noisy. It's like, it's just, I see what the merchants go through, and I see how, so many of the chargebacks, they're not, like you said, 70, 80% probably, they're not chargebacks. They shouldn't be, right? They're not fraud. It's some other reason for a dispute to happen, right? It's a consumer dispute. And I know, like, whenever I got into the merchant world and discovered chargebacks, the first thing I did was looked and went into my database and said, we must be screwing up as a merchant. We must be having bad customer support, right? Or, whatever the thing wasn't. In that case, I figured that they were all contacting us and we were just messing something up. Not a one of them contacted us, right? And so, making sure that our partner, that Mastercard and Ethoca with, Kyle and his team know what we're seeing in the space, because things change, right? They change every single day. They, there's new use cases, there's new things we're seeing in the industry. And so having someone that I know will actually listen to us and react, right? And help us come up with a solution.
Things pop up all the time, right?
From both sides. Like, I love that too, that Kyle and the Ethoca team will actually come and talk to me and ask, what do you think? What are you seeing? And without being prompted. And the same for me. I know I can go to them whenever I want, just text, phone call, and I'll be listened to at the very least. And and honestly, in most cases, the resolution turns out to be what I want.
Yeah. And
that's just helping my merchants.
It's funny. I think back to how our partnership started, and I was sitting in a restaurant in Charlotte having lunch on a Saturday on a trip, and I was watching this might speak to my life, but I was watching fraud videos from Scott Adams on YouTube.
They're exciting.
Yeah, they're really exciting. So, and I shot him a text and I was like, hey, when are we going to add the Ethoca logo to your website? And he's like, man, we need to do this. And so I was like, we need to do one of these podcasts together and just talk about our partnership. And so it's come full circle. It's been a couple years, and we appreciate partners like Scott. And I'll tell you, not everybody understands the merchant experience quite like Scott and his team do, because they've lived it and they've been there. And so it's not just that they're advocate, they have a business and they're worried about being successful in their business. It's about, like, they care about their customer and their merchant and making sure they're doing what's best for them. And it's a pleasure to work with these guys.
Yeah, that's something to me. It's like, talk about that a lot too, really, internally as much as externally, is that, I think as a business owner and as a CEO, the best decisions we can make, they always should be ones that will actually help our end user, right? Which in our case is the merchant.
Yeah.
And, and I really think that Ethoca too, you guys had that same focus, right? Whoever, you listen to us, we're voicing those concerns of the merchant.
Yeah.
And like you said, almost everybody in our leadership team has been a merchant, right? Pretty much everybody, most people in the company, not everybody, but most of them have been a merchant in some way.
Yeah.
And and those that haven't, we make sure that they see it, they feel it, they live those experiences.
Understand it.
Yeah, because if you don't understand it, you can't do this.
Makes it difficult. I got a couple more areas I want to cover just real quickly. Let's talk a little bit more about the subscription service, subscription, because you're going to be the first vendor on the market with that. So
Partner, but yeah.
Partner, excuse me. So I want to know what that means. We just got back from a large subscription show and got feedback from that entire side of the industry. And what does that mean for Ethoca and Mastercard? And talk a little bit more about that.
The quick answer from my side, Kyle knows the product better. It's their product. But what I've seen so far, we're going to launch it in such a way that the merchant can basically accept cancellation requests right from the app, right? And I think, we always literally, an hour ago in a session with the founder of that company that Mastercard acquired to do this, and it's the statistics he was talking about were really interesting. And but then even thinking about thinking about my kids, or I've got kids that are in their 20s and I've got a 14-year-old, and both sets of kids, they don't want to call somebody, right? Really, shoot, I would say anyone even in their 20s, maybe even into their 30s, honestly, shoot, I don't generally want to call somebody. If I can just go to my app and do it, that's it, right? And so I would much rather work that way. And so I'm super excited that we can launch something like this and be one of the first to use it. And I'm hearing the coverage is great. So I think that our merchants are going to love it.
Yeah. I mean, we're very fortunate at Ethoca. We have a product called Alerts that's table stakes on the merchant side. It's table stakes on the issuer side. It really is. You got to have it. And for chargeback prevention. And there's a multiple different merchant personas, and we're continuing to try and find ways to drive value for all different types of merchant personas. But to the subscription control question, on the issuer side, we're seeing so much demand from issuers, and we just went and did a talk downstairs a few minutes ago, and Navi, who's the one of the co-founders and CEO of Meta, has moved over. He's part of our leadership team at Ethoca now. It's a core part of the Clarity product. So, the first question you asked was, how do you attack fraud? And at the end of the day, it's a multi-pronged approach, right? And with subscriptions, the ability to interact with a cardholder where they want to interact is so critically important to getting the usage of any particular product, right? You can have the best product in the world, but if your utilization is low, it really doesn't matter how good the product is. And so when a cardholder has an inquiry or concern about a transaction, they go into their digital banking app, and we're expanding through partners. We're expanding through issuer processors that have digital engagement platforms, digital banking app providers in market. We're partnering with them at Ethoca to make HubView available, where they can inventory all their subscriptions. We just talked about this. If I ask you how many subscriptions you have, whatever answer you gave me would be wrong, and you have way more than you think you have.
I like how Navi said it was like most people would say 10 or 12, and what did they say? One guy said it 70.
Yeah, and it's
true.
And we had somebody come and talk to us a couple of years ago about the subscription economy, and how many subscriptions you have, and you took are you a millennial? Are you Gen X? Are you Gen Z? I'm like, I don't know, whatever my kid's age, that's what I am, because I think I have like 50 subscriptions to every service you can think of. But
probably 2 to some of them.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So when you look at that, you need a way to engage that cardholder where they want to engage, and so we've done that in the digital banking app. But also we need partners on the merchant side to be able to, at the end of the day, the only way to solve a subscription today is just by stopping the payment, right, or disputing it. And so what we're saying to the merchant side partners is, at the end of the day, I know a canceled subscription is not ideal, but it's better than a stop payment. It's better than a dispute. And so, also we want to give you an opportunity now to present a retention offer, or to upgrade, downgrade the subscription, to pause the subscription, give them different options so that it doesn't just result in a subscription. And what we're seeing is more repeat business from the cardholder when that happens.
I'm excited to see it, because I think, if you think about it, like we were talking about a minute ago, giving ways to interact. And like, when I said, like, my first view of subscriptions was, or not subscriptions, but chargebacks, was seeing that those merchants never, or those consumers never contacted me. Not one of them that did a chargeback.
Yeah.
And I think nowadays it's probably even more and more prevalent because you've got the younger consumers, they live on their phone. What did the guys say, that some 85% of people are never within or further than 3 feet from their phone? And they do not want to call people.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, even now, but think a little bit ago, like you want to cancel your cable subscription or satellite or whatever, and you call them up and it's a fight. Like they make it so hard and they want to sell you a bunch of stuff. And maybe, yeah, they want to give you an upgrade or downgrade offer, but it's in such a sales, you don't want to do it.
Yeah.
We've been conditioned in a lot of ways not to call.
Or they're just hoping you'll abandon it.
Yes.
Give up.
Yeah. So what do we do? We charge it back.
Yep.
Right. And most people, we know what a chargeback is. 95%, probably 99% of the consumers out there have no idea. They just think they're doing a refund.
Yeah.
They don't know it hurts the merchant. So giving them a digital way to do it, it's brilliant.
And I think it goes back to the conversation we're having about the partner summits where we have issuers and merchants sitting at the table. I mean, in this situation, if the merchants were making it easier and for the cardholder to cancel, then maybe they would see fewer chargebacks and those types of things. But and again, that's why I always say it's not always one thing, it's not always the other, right?
It's all fish right now.
Yeah.
No, it's everybody. It's the whole ecosystem.
Yeah.
We all need, if we do what you say, if we'd all get to really talk, if we could all talk every day, none of this would happen. We could all collaborate and make it work.
Well, it's that subscription economy. I mean, everything from razor blades to dinner.
Sports cars.
Yeah, I mean, they were even talking about it. Like, you may get a subscription to Amazon, but then there's Audible and there's Prime Video and so you can keep going down into micro subscriptions that sit behind a main the subscription. So it goes on. You can buy movies, you can do all sorts of things with it. So, I think people forget that they've bought something and they just get fed up and they go, I want this to stop, right?
Well, let me see how it works, because if it makes it easier and everybody's job is a little bit easier, then everybody wins, because a chargeback is the most costly way to do something like that. So that's great.
Great.
We're at Money 2020. You guys have been down on the floor. I'm glad we got an hour or so with you guys, but I want to ask you a question, and then we'll have a closing question after this one, because we'll close it out. But the big thing at Money 2020 is Agentic AI. How much by the end of the year is an agent going to be buying for us rather than us buying? And my big question as I look at that is, what does that do to the chargeback process if I've got an agent buying for me now and it's not me? And so I'm just curious. I don't know if anybody's got the answer. If you do, we're going to talk about starting a business after this, because I don't think anybody has the answer. But what are your thoughts? I mean, this is coming fast and furious. What happens to the chargeback process, the dispute process, in an agentic purchasing world?
Yeah, I mean, I can just speak from our perspective, or just Kyle's perspective. My perspective is, in an agentic AI experience, I think there's a lot of risk. It's not just to the chargeback. It's to the loyalty of the merchants. It's to, the flow of transactions. So you have an agentic AI, somebody goes online and they go to purchase something, use an agent, and then that agent then becomes the merchant of record and actually accepts the card payment from the cardholder. And then they turn around and create a virtual card and pay a third party for that particular item. And that item gets shipped, maybe it gets drop shipped by a fourth party. And then it comes in a box that doesn't look anything like the original box that they thought they were going to be getting. And then let's say the consumer, even if it's a service dispute, I ordered a pair of brown boots, I got a pair of black boots, and I don't like them. And now who do I return them to? And so it creates, we talked about friendly fraud earlier, and most of that stuff is benign. But now you're adding another layer in that makes it even more complicated. And certainly it makes the consumer that much more removed from the accountability of that transaction. That's my thought process on it, because I look at it and how is this going to muck up the process with disputes.
How's the data flow?
How does the data flow and all of that, right? And I just think it introduces. But by the way, I'm not against it. I think we want to evolve as we want to evolve as consumers, and we want things to be easier. We want to plan our trips with Chat GPT, and hey, I want to go do this in this particular town or whatever it is. Help me with an itinerary. There are things that I think are extraordinarily helpful, and it is continuing to evolve. But right now, it's subject to, this is what I want you to do, and this is what I want you to do it, and it goes out and looks for different things. The second piece of it, I think, is so I think it's good. I just think that
we got some fingers.
we got to keep our eye on it and just see how it starts to impact the ecosystem and be able to read and react to it. But the second piece is, I think about how the merchant might be disintermediated from the loyalty that they've worked so hard and spent so much money on acquiring from their particular consumers or their customers, and I think that is going to have that's going to have a big impact, and it's something that we need to watch. Because if you're a retailer and you've spent a ton of money marketing to a particular demographic, and all of a sudden now an agent's the one making a decision about where they go out and purchase products or what products they go out and purchase, I think it's going to impact that whole ecosystem.
That's an interesting thought, the loyalty piece, because that's a multi-billion-dollar industry.
Right.
That everybody participates in, and if that has a negative effect on that, what happens? But I didn't cut you off, Scott.
No, it's fine. That's even like, as Kyle was talking, and we talked about this earlier, I was thinking of two different things, like kind of in the loyalty spectrum, just marketing, right? People, the retailers especially, if you're not talking about a product that's sold by a single company, but like retailers that sell a lot of things, they're spending tons of money on marketing. Does that matter anymore? If an agent, an AI is out there doing it, and then thinking about the fraud, like say you like to say that if you're someone that fights fraud like we do, and I've spent my whole career doing, you kind of got to be able to think like a fraudster. So how are they going to approach this? Just literally, I didn't even think about this until just now. It's like, oh my God, that's a huge opportunity. Not a business opportunity for us honest people, but for the fraudsters.
Yeah.
Right? You figure out how the agents are working, you target them.
Yeah.
But then the thing that you did say, and I thought about earlier too, is the merchant record part.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think about that. Like, to me, I was thinking that the Agentic AI, the merchant is still the merchant, and the consumer is still the consumer, and the agent's an intermediary, but still it's me buying from them.
Right.
Whereas if that's a whole different perspective.
Yeah.
That if the agent is the consumer and the merchant.
Yeah. I mean, you like a particular brand of shoes or skis or snowboards or whatever it is, it could be that you still get that brand of snowboard, but it might come from a different local shop that happened to have a better return policy or a quicker shipping or whatever it is. And
or just lower price.
Or it's a lower price. Yeah, exactly. And so I think that, from a consumer standpoint, you want to get the best deal you can get, and you want to get it as quick as possible, and you want to have as many options as you can have. But
what about customer service? What about all those intangibles?
I do think all of that is going to be impacted, because when you look at all of the logistically, or the logistics of it, if you look at all the different entities that have to be involved in getting that product from point A to point B and supporting that product after it's been delivered, it changes things. Again, not saying that it shouldn't be done, not saying that it shouldn't be done, and it's not something that we should shy away from, but it is something that we have to keep our eye on and be able to read and react to.
Yeah,
and those change the picture a little bit.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I think, and then there's the case of how do we handle the disputes? How does that all flow into this? What we've been talking about today. It's going to get interesting. It's going to have to evolve.
Well, we know all those agencies are going to need consumer clarity and alerts. We know that.
And as I see what's happening, I'm going to be sure to tell you.
That's right. Well, let's do this. I want to, it's been a great discussion, so I really appreciate your time today and getting this out there, because there's so much that changes. It keeps your jobs very fresh, doesn't it?
Well, it's never a dull moment.
Yeah. So when we look at 2026, I'm not asking for predictions, but What's new down the road for Ethoca 2026?
Well, we've got a number of products that we're looking at enhancing and putting out, and one of them is a product called Auth Boost, which is really working with our issuers and our merchants to, based on merchant behavior, look at how we can increase authorizations for certain types of transactions, and more will be coming down the pike on that one when we
Give me the contract when you're ready.
when we announce it.
Shall we?
But we've got just a product team at Ethoca has never been as mature as they are right now, and just we're really seeing some exciting things. Everything from the work that they're doing on alerts to clean up duplicates, and more than anything, find more alerts. Use AI to get better matching, and find ways to get more alerts to customers that they can action, so we can continue to increase the efficacy of our products. But like products like this, where we're looking at how can we increase authorization rates. We talked to some of our processor partners, and they're looking at when they're building out their algorithms on the fraud side for for looking for anomalies and looking for fraud. One of the things they factor in is if whether or not that merchant is on Ethoca alerts, and whether they refund transactions. And so they're trying to use that to everyone's looking for ways to optimize their authorization rates. And so that's something that's pretty exciting that we're talking about right now.
We already see auth. I don't think we have really good data on it. I know Mastercard and Ethoca does, but we definitely see increased authorizations with merchants that use Ethoca.
Yeah, I'd love to work with you guys on a case study on that. Just we've done some in market where we see a significant uptick in authorization, and we want to look at what it's directly attributed to, because I think in that situation we want to make sure it's a credible business case that's built with a partner. So it's something we'd like to do with you guys.
Awesome. It's interesting. It's easy to stop fraud. I've heard that before.
Yep.
But it's hard to enhance authorizations without enhancing risk, without increasing that risk. And so looking forward to that. That will be welcomed with open arms.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to use data points and do it in an intelligent way, right?
Yeah, it's all connected.
Yeah.
At least that's how I would approach it. I'm sure it is. That's what you guys are doing.
So Scott, 2026, I know FD.ID Technology has done some pretty cool things on your platform. What do we have to look forward to?
I think we're going to definitely continue to go forward that direction. We were really founded around the idea that, as much as we do love, and definitely merchants need Ethoca alerts, what we want to do more of, though, is the collaboration side. So things like, with consumer clarity, first party trust. But additionally, I think there's a lot more we can do around, using things like AI, machine learning, predicting what's going on, and just helping our merchants to improve their authorization rates via products that are coming out, improve their ability to prevent things from even going down the dispute rails. I think that's what the merchants want. Like, they really don't want to refund something. Like, if it's actual fraud, or if it's the best thing for the consumer. So, if they want a refund, then let's give them a refund. But if they're just refunding because they want to cancel a subscription, or if they're refunding because, they see it as refund.
Yeah.
So if they're charging back because they have some consumer dispute that could be resolved, we want to make that possible, right? And then before that, if it is fraud, we want to know, and we want to stop it. And so, I think that's where we're really going, is more and more upstream. We're going to have more, let's call it, right now we're more post-auth. And I think we're going to mostly stay there, but we're going to start gathering more data from the pre-auth side, but then using it super early post-auth. And I think that merchants often forget that there's a gap of time here that, one, you haven't settled yet. If you haven't settled, you can still void. Or let's say that, like an alert could be months later when the consumer is disputing something.
Right.
But there could have been plenty of data showing that this is probably going to end up toward a dispute. And so if we can catch it before it becomes an alert, or even before it becomes even a call into the bank, then why shouldn't we stop it there?
Yeah, I mean,
we're going to do more and more of those kind of things.
We do see, with a lot of our banks, we see authorization data or where they've detected an anomaly, and we'll get those signals as well and then true them up with our settlement data. And it's where organizations like airlines or, even what we call total cost of fraud merchants, or, the big retailers of the world that a TV might have been purchased, and we're able to get that transaction to them quickly enough where they can stop that shipment out of there. And
Yeah.
so really we're in that, we always say Ethica is not a fraud detection organization, right? We're a chargeback mitigation and a business that really tries to improve the post-transaction consumer experience as a whole, remove the friction through collaboration. But in these situations, we're actually preventing the fraud. I mean, stopping the fraud from being fulfilled, essentially the goods from being sent out. And so that happens in about 20% of our cases.
And a lot of the, our newer technology too, like, we've got I think probably best in class behavioral technology. And so, we can detect based on movements of the mouse, how the person uses their computer and their device in so many cases. And using that data with the data that that you guys have, and we're talking about trying to get even more data from you. Um, I think there's just so much more we can do that'll improve both the consumer experience and the merchant experience, and then still lower fraud and just make our merchants more successful, make them grow, which is what we see every day when a merchant signs up. Even I find it interesting, even like when they transfer even from another provider, we'll see they'll have better response, better performance of the products like an Ethica alert.
Yeah.
But then on top of that, we'll see within a month or two, their volumes go up, because now they don't have to worry about fraud. We take care of that. Let us do what we do, let them do what they do, and
Right.
let you guys do what you do, and we all work together and make your better ecosystem.
That's great. Well, that's great stuff to look forward to for 2026. Thanks again, Kyle and Scott, talking about the partnership, technology, so much out there that is at the merchant's disposal if they'll just be informed, and hopefully we'll help do that as we go along. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you,
Great.
Don.
Thank you, Don.
Thanks, Scott.